what's happening? Tell me what's going down. Make yourself at home, this is Reputation Town. Talking public relations to corporate reputations, media communications, all types of situations. Hey, Reputation Town, Reputation Town. Warren and John, tell them how it's going down. Let's go. The Reputation Town Podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Reputation Town. It's December 6th, 2024, almost Christmas time. John, there's aliens everywhere. What do we make of this?
I forgot I got to read the stories about the aliens.
I can't believe you didn't.
What I was going to say, though, is that it feels like the news cycle is in overdrive right now for some reason. You were telling me about aliens. There's just like stuff happening everywhere.
Have you seen any of these shots, these videos of these things?
I saw a couple after you told me about them. And I saw the sort of government speaking about them, and I'm like, this is interesting.
But what are your thoughts?
I think it's probably like the Air Force or something testing something, or the Army testing something. That's my thoughts.
And they're just not telling anyone about it.
Well, no, because if you're testing a new thing, you're not going to tell everyone about it.
I don't know. It's I'd like to think that's maybe what it is, because any other option is not great. It's China, that's bad. It's actual aliens.
That'd be bad.
That's not great. But it's funny, like I've got actual friends and colleagues who work in and around New Jersey, and they're saying like they're going outside and seeing these things. It's very disconcerting. People are kind of freaking out a little bit.
That's pretty wild.
It's understandable. So a lot of topics to cover this week. No major stories, but a whole bunch of kind of small ones, and all over the place from the world of reputations. The one we're going to kick off with has been such a big story this week, and we're not going to get into a lot of the politicization of it, but it's the CEO who was gunned down in New York the other day. This has been a really big story. It's a very shocking one, and the response to it has been equally shocking in a bunch of different ways, and brings up a lot of different issues, which that you can get that on another podcast. But you had sent this over to me talking about the communications response from the company. Do you want to chat about that?
For sure. So whenever there's a major event or something, a crisis that happens, it's always really interesting to see what companies do and say in the midst of it, or in the aftermath of it. And in this case, the company issued a statement, as you might expect them to. And it was basically, we are deeply saddened and shocked at the passing of our dear friend and colleague, Brian Thompson, CEO of United Healthcare. Brian was a respected colleague, et cetera, et cetera. Our hearts go out to Brian and his family and those close to him. And then they attached their normal news release boilerplate at the bottom. And I just thought this was just
like about us.
It didn't match the circumstance. The statement itself could have been for anything. It could have been for, somebody who passed away because, they were 99 and they were the former CEO. Like it just didn't match the gravity of the situation. And then, yeah, as you said, the boilerplate, like this is some sort of just general release that they're normally doing. It just seemed weird. And maybe it's like the rigidity of corporate communications in a big company like this. I don't know. What do you think?
Maybe you can't, to be generous, maybe you can't put one of these updates without that template, the boilerplate being on there. But it's like they talk about this, and it's not just any employee. It's their CEO was murdered in cold blood on the street. There's a video of it circulating. All these rumors and speculation and all issues around insurance and healthcare and the 1%ers and everything else. And the statement, what is it, like 40 words? Seems really vanilla. I don't know. If you think of reputation as a human being and as your career, and you put all this work in, and then you get 40 words followed by about United Health Group and their ticker symbol and a couple of their media relations and investor relations contacts. It's just, I don't know. It seems kind of sad. And obviously it pales in comparison to the guy having, family and children and everything else. It's interesting how in this world that's so connected that a story like this can pop so in such a huge manner. Apparently private security firms, their phones are ringing off the hook. Like this is this is one of those things that can get or spark copycats and that kind of thing. So I think you're going to see that private security thing really being ramped up. Like this is like something out of Batman. This is crazy.
Yeah, you're right. I would expect there's no insurance company CEO right now that doesn't have some sort of protection as a result of this.
The and I almost hesitated to bring this up, but we chatted about this one ahead of time. There's this journalist, Taylor Lorenz. I think that's how you say her name. She was with the New York Times, then the Washington Post. Very, I guess you could say she's a kind of polarizing figure. She was very outspoken during the pandemic and about, people not wearing masks. She's like just in, F-bombs. There was a famous incident or an interview where she was crying about being bullied and harassed as a journalist. And I get that. Like no one should have to deal with that in their professional life. And then at the same time though, if you're going to be doing that, there was a statement that she made on Blue Sky, which is supposed to be the friendly unicorns, rainbows, blue sky, come and join us. The cesspool, X is a cesspool. This is fun. And she basically said, and people wonder why we want these CEOs dead or something like that. And then included a photo of another CEO of another company. And so a lot of people are saying this is really inappropriate, that she's almost kind of calling for this. So like the response has been kind of nuts. Like there was a guy who, I don't know if you saw this guy. He's the one who tracks all the e-bike data. Did you see this guy?
Yeah.
And who knew he had this hobby that he's getting this information, and he basically said, I know which bike this person was using and where it headed. It was the same time. And he goes, I gave that information to the police. And the comments are like, you snitch, this guy's a hero. You should let. I'm like, what is going on? So it's very, very strange. But for someone who calls themselves a journalist and wants to be operating at the highest levels of that profession, to be basically calling for the deaths of people, I think is in pretty poor taste. So I think that's.
I would definitely agree. And in the same sort of space as the story exists, another insurance company at the same time announced a reduction in coverage. I think it was they put a limit on the amount of time they would pay for anesthesia during certain surgeries.
Right.
And if the surgery went longer, you would no longer be covered for the additional time. And then they since reversed themselves, I believe.
Yeah.
But talk about bad timing.
Because of the backlash. And I think that might have been the CEO that she was referring to of that company, the one that she showed the picture of. I'm not sure, but I kind of think. But ugly story. Do you think they're going to catch the person? Do you think? And let's give us a time frame, like just a little bit of a prediction. Will they catch him, and when?
I think they'll catch him before the weekend's out. He seemed practiced, but kind of amateurish. So I think they're going to track him down.
How can he be both practiced and amateurish?
Well, you can practice for something, but not be good at it.
Oh, the guitar in the corner. That's proof of that. But so many people like, oh, but he's like, he's a professional hitman. It didn't seem super, I don't know. There's pictures of him at the coffee shop flirting with someone now. And
yeah, I've never really trained in that profession before, but it seemed to me from an amateur standpoint.
Just want to get that out there. You're not a trained assassin. But crazy story. Like if on a serious note, if you are an executive of any company right now, how do you not think about this? Because every company has people who are pissed at the company. And typically you would call with a complaint, talk to the ombuds person, maybe not shop there anymore, give them a bad Yelp score. This seems, this is like third world stuff. It's crazy that this is happening. And again, if you want to go more into depth on that, there's other places and other shows. There was another big story recently with the Toronto Public Library, and this is I'm sure most people have heard of this at this point in time. The child's mother sent out a tweet. It has almost 17 million views. So there was a daughter, 11 years old. Her PA day program let out a couple hours early. She accidentally got on the wrong streetcar. She went like east instead of going west. And when she got off, she didn't really know where she was. And so she wandered into a library, which you would think, smart for the kids. Find a library, safe space, community. She goes in and asks to use a phone, and whoever was working there, the supervisor, and I don't think they've given this person's name. So, it's interesting. Cancel culture, I guess, is gone now. So we're not going to cancel. We're not going to cancel this person. But told the kid, you can't use a phone. Why don't you go out and use a payphone? And I don't know if anyone under 40 years of age either knows what a payphone is, has ever used one,
or if they exist anymore. Like,
where would you find one?
Yeah.
And so this tweet just absolutely blew up. And not that it was an organizational policy, but this was a kind of a dickish move on behalf of this person. And it ended up with a lot of negative attention on the Toronto Public Library. Now, to their credit, they did respond with a statement, sort of in the same vein as the one you just read from the insurance company, very high level. And this is really not good. And we're going to retrain our employees, and we're going to kind of go back to the drawing board. And this is kind of unacceptable. We're going to reach out to the family. It kind of said all the right things. But at that point, 17 million views, tons of news coverage. And the, has the reputational damage been done? Is this a blip? What does this mean in the bigger picture? And what would you do if this was your kid? Like, I was thinking, if this is my child, I would be beside myself. Although I don't think I would have my kid on a streetcar by themselves at 11, but that's a whole other story.
Well, the thing that struck me about it was, and we've talked about this before, when you're dealing with that kind of situation where the organization has failed in some basic way to serve the people it's supposed to serve, put a person out to speak to it. Don't put a statement out. And the fact that they weren't human enough to allow the little girl to use the phone, and then again didn't have a human being to step up and say, we're sorry, we're going to make this better, is a real failing. It's like after the fact, even though they may have said the right things. And again, those things were all very canned that were in there. I can imagine there's not a lot of people who would want to step up in front of the camera and say that, but sometimes you just have to do it. Anyway, that was my takeaway from it.
Absolutely agree. That is one of the things, and it's so funny that people, especially people kind of older, 40s, 50s, in a leadership position, I think didn't really grow up with social media. And I think the thought of you grabbing a phone and doing a 60-second video and posting it is horrifying to those individuals, not understanding that could be absolutely the thing that makes it go away. And instead of 17 million views, maybe it gets 2, and maybe it kind of goes away because there's a human face. And you don't have to worry about being misquoted by the media or making sure that your interview goes well. You can just go straight to the source. So I found it really, really weird that they didn't do that. So, bit of a side note, we met up the other night. Did I tell you the story about the dog that we found? Did I mention this to you? So, and this is kind of related, and it's talking about humans and kindness and everything else. So, my daughter was home from university for the weekend. It was her birthday. So I'm driving her to the train station. And as we're driving down the road, she sees a dog running down the road. It's a pretty busy road, 60-kilometer speed limit. Dog's running down the road with a leash behind it. It's a golden lab. And she says, or golden retriever. She says, "Oh my God, there's a dog running." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm sure someone's with it." It's clear the dog's doesn't have an owner. And so now we go into save the dog mode. I'm like, oh my God. So now we turn in this street and the dog is just tearing down the road. It's obviously freaked out, and it doesn't look that old. It looks like kind of like a puppy, maybe under a year old. And so long story short, we end up chasing this dog for about 20 minutes, and the train had been delayed. So we had some time. So we're going through parks and we're going through parking lots, and the dog disappears and then it pops back out and we see it. And finally I get out and I'm running down the street like a maniac. My daughter's in the car, and I kind of corner the dog, and the dog just kind of stops and it flops on the ground, just exhausted. But in the meantime, a couple other cars had come by, and there was a guy walking his dog, and he comes over and he knocks on some lady's door, and she gets a bowl of water, and they check the phone number on the dog's tag, and we call, and the car shows up. That's human kindness. A whole bunch of people for this dog that probably otherwise would have gotten hit by a car. And, but someone at the library doesn't have that kind of common sense or kindness for an 11-year-old kid. So, when we went through that event the other day, I was I found that kind of optimistic, oh man, kindness is back. Cause I do everything I can to not talk to strangers anymore. But that was you run into one after another person who all did the right thing spontaneously. Like it would have been easy for the people in the house to not even open their door or, tase us. And the fact that they don't have someone like that working at the library when a kid comes in is bananas. So, they had the little statement worked out, but I think from a reputational standpoint, and the thing that sucks is, I think Brad Ross wrote a newsletter thing about that today, and he called it a bad apple. And I agree. Like you have one bad apple in the library. Maybe that's just the wrong person, but it reflects on the whole organization. All the different branches that they have all around the city took a hit because of that. And the employees and the managers and everyone else, I'm sure, are super pissed about that. And but it only takes one bad apple to take your organization's name down for a couple of days.
Yeah, for sure. And he would know that from his time at the TTC.
Yeah. And I think, in his newsletter, he referred to that. And anyone who doesn't subscribe to that, go check it out. Brad Ross on Substack, great newsletter, comms. Always trying to give people some promotion on here. So in the world of podcasting, I think there's like, how many podcasts are out there now? Like 5 million, some outrageous number.
Yeah.
Lots. Anyway, Stats Canada apparently spent almost $1 million to produce a podcast. And how many people do you think ended up subscribing to it? It's $1 million. That's a lot of, imagine the people that they could get as hosts and the production values and the advertising and everything else. How many people subscribe to this podcast?
I'm going to take a wild guess. 229.
Man, the amazing Kreskin, you are exactly right. So I don't really know the context of this. It was just something online on Twitter, X. There is a government meeting, and this member, I think from the Conservative Party, it's a pretty short clip, but they're talking about this podcast, and then you hear just a bit of the back and forth about it.
Thank you very much. I think I still had a bit over a minute.
1 minute, 30 seconds, yeah, sorry.
Okay. It was recently revealed that the government spent over $970,000 to produce a podcast that ended up only having 229 subscribers. That's a lot of dollars per subscriber. I'm wondering if, and this was specifically Stats Canada that had paid this close to $1 million. I'm wondering if you have any thoughts or feedback about, nearly $1 million spent to produce a podcast that many people do from their phones, walking down the street, whatever the case is, for virtually no cost. Yet the government spent $1 million, yet only garnered a subscriber base of 229. I'm wondering if you have any thoughts or feelings about that.
So off the top, quickly, I actually thought I misheard that when I first heard about it. I thought it was government funding other people's podcasts, whatever it was. But no, this was a government department's podcast. It is astonishing that they're spending a nickel on that. And I'm going to turn this over to my colleague. He's the investigative journalist for the CTF, Ryan Thorpe. Ryan, you were doing some digging on that. It was astonishing to see.
Yeah, so...
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Oh.
And you only have 15 seconds, thanks.
I'll just add quickly that we dug up these records. The costs are ridiculous. They're producing podcasts that no Canadian would ask or be willing to pay for. It's reflected in that subscriber count, and it is clearly a massive waste of our money.
That's our tagline. It's a podcast that no Canadian would want to listen to or subscribe to. So I was thinking for $1 million, they could have got Oprah to host this thing. I think that's what Kamala Harris paid Oprah.
I think so.
So again, one of these ridiculous stories that pops up, I don't think it's I don't think this is going to have a huge shelf life. But when you hear about this, what are your thoughts? And this is not helping the government.
My thought was, how do we get in line for that? You're going to pay us $1 million.
We do this for free. We're doing this or actually it costs us money.
In their defense, StatsCan actually does some pretty funny and pretty, I think, good social media posts to try and bring some of the data they produce to life and make it accessible to people. But I don't know. It seems $1 million for the podcast seems like a pretty not a waste, but you're not really getting value for money there. Like I'm not sure what they were trying to accomplish with that communications vehicle, but clearly there would be better ways of doing it for that money.
I'm not sure it's possible to spend $1 million on a podcast. Like where did the money go? Like is it studios, equipment? Like this stuff is not. expensive. Like that
producing.
that guy's comment, you could do it on your phone. You could just talk into a phone and
Good, but they clearly weren't.
man, oh man.
What I'm saying though is that we're in the market for government largesse. So
Yeah, we don't have any advertisers, so come on, Canadian government. But that's the kind of thing that in the States that Elon and that Vivek or Ramaswamy would be going after. Then they're like,
oh yeah, it would be a poster child for this government kind
in
of government
Canada,
place.
it's just another department.
You know what it's like? Remember over the years, politicians walk into this every once in a while. There was, I can't remember who it was, but there was one time there was like someone got a $17 glass of orange juice.
Oh
at
yeah.
a hotel or something. I remember it incorrectly, but those things just strike the public consciousness because they're just so out of line with what normal people are used to or could fathom doing. And it's a real danger. And that's where you'd think people who are responsible for producing this kind of content would be thinking about that.
Okay, I want to look this up. It was Bev Oda, and it was a $16 glass of orange juice. What year was this though? Because like now everything is $16. Like orange juice, a glass of orange juice is now $16. It's just what it is. 2006. In 2011. Where's the orange juice, man?
There was also an episode once where I think it was like a senator was criticized for, I don't know, getting a special meal or something, or taking like a first class seat on a plane.
Right.
And she said, "Oh, what do they expect us to eat? Cold camembert and broken crackers."
Oh my God. So I think it was 2012. Okay, in 2012, it was reported that during a 2011 conference on immunization of poor children, Oda had refused to stay in the conference hotel furnished by the hosts. She instead stayed at the Savoy Hotel at a cost of $666 per night for 3 nights. That's kind of bananas for over a decade ago. Ordered orange juice at a cost of $16, hired a limousine to transport her between the hotel and the conference, which, you know, the reason she was staying there is because she didn't like it. And she was also charged $250 for smoking in a non-smoking room. So this is like the holy trifecta of taxpayer abuse. And now $16 for orange juice, like not so bad. It's a pretty good deal. Man, oh man. We talked about Jaguar last time. We had seen the branding, the logo, the kind of teaser, but we hadn't seen a car. Since then, on December 2nd, they revealed the car. I'm sure everyone's seen it again. It's gotten very widely viewed. Have you got your order in? Are you going to be driving one of these babies? What are your thoughts? Were you surprised?
It's a real car. Okay, I'll say this. After we did the last episode and we talked about it, I had this moment where I thought, are they trolling everyone? And this whole thing is meant to be some sort of just PR exercise, and they're going to release like a normal car. Clearly not, because what they released was like a prop from a movie from the 1990s that was set in 2025.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Someone's imaginary version of what a futuristic car would have looked like 30 years ago.
Yeah. It just seems wholly impractical, and like, I don't know what they're thinking, but.
Well, this is a brand shooting itself in the head in public view. It's the ugliest car.
Yeah.
I think I'm trying to think if I seen an uglier car. I don't know.
I don't think one exists.
It's not, and it seems very impractical. Like the nose, like the hood of the car is about 3/4 of the car. How would you, it's like the Batmobile from the Tim Burton movies. Like, how would you park this thing? The window, these tiny little windows, it looks just weird.
Warren, if you're getting that car, you're not parking it. Somebody else is parking it for you. Somebody else's problem.
Well, if you get it in Canada, someone's going to take it out of your driveway in the middle of the night and steal it, and it'll be in a different country on a raft in a couple days. So there was Morning Brew had a sort of satirical take on this. They had one of their people did this kind of a fake reveal of the ad, and I thought it was kind of funny. So hopefully this lands okay. So this is not actually from Jaguar, but the caption on here is from Morning Brew. I think they sent this out on November 21st. And it says Jaguar Chief Brand Officer. It's clearly not their Chief Brand Officer, but this is like a sort of a minute long sort of behind the scenes of them making their commercial.
You all hate our rebrand, but I'm here to reassure you, we have a vision here. We hear you. It looks like a vape brand that only children buy. You said that replacing the Jaguar head with a monogram was like murdering a British icon. We might as well have shot Paddington Bear.
Cut! You're supposed to be reassuring them. Just get to the point. Tell them why this is fine.
I get it. That font looks like it belongs on a pink lemonade flavored condom.
Cut!
And I feel you, commenter who said sales are down 80% from 2017 and you thought that the phrase create exuberant was going to bring them back?
Cut!
Shit looks like if Star Trek was made by Quibi.
Cut!
British cars so bad we gotta make them an American colony.
Cut! Can you just get to the point and reassure our customers?
Okay, so the point is you hate everything you've seen so far, but the good news is we're about to double down. See you in Miami in 2 weeks. You're gonna hate it.
And it's kind of a funny clip. And apparently people did hate it. I've actually seen some people on LinkedIn, and I don't know. LinkedIn lately has been almost like unwatchable. Have you found this? Like the quality of LinkedIn is just crap these days.
I haven't actually, because I haven't spent a ton of time other than a couple posts. But I will say one thing is that I'm surprised that since Microsoft bought LinkedIn, there hasn't been more of sort of evolution of the platform,
Innovation
or integration of the platform.
Yeah.
With Microsoft, it just seems very stuck. I think
the congratulatory, self-congratulatory patting. I'm humbled about this and that. It's just these masturbatory posts that are just, and especially in the PR, like we follow a lot of PR people. There's just so many of them that just have these formulaic kind of candy corn, just like if you're going to quit a platform, I think LinkedIn's the one. You kind of have to be there. Like you have to have your shingle out. Yeah. I think if you're going to be in the business that we're in, but man, oh man, I'd love to see them tweak that algorithm, because people who have real talk, I find that if someone has a real opinion about something or they want to have a discussion about something, that stuff just gets suppressed. And it's just the sort of happy unicorn BS that bubbles to the top. I don't think that's helping anybody. So that's
an interesting point. Sorry,
no, it's okay.
An interesting point you're making, because there's really no competitor to that, is there?
No.
Another professional networking platform. Like it's basically the only game in town.
It really is, and you're sort of at their mercy. And it's interesting to see what flies and what doesn't. Like I took I sent out that Taylor Lorenz clip from the other day, like the post of her saying, "This is why we want people to die." It was just like an image, and saying like, a lot of people are saying that they're leaving, and it's because that was done on Blue Sky. And so I posted that. I was on the train downtown yesterday, and I checked it a couple hours later, had 2 impressions. Like only 2 people had said, so clearly they're like, yeah, we're not putting that out there. And I think, to me, that brings up an interesting conversation. If you're in the journalism, the media, the public relations world, and just nothing, they might as well have just deleted it. So I find that funny. Paul Krugman retires from the New York Times. We were chatting about this a little bit before. This was just announced today. I think everyone knows this guy. He's 71 years old. Very prolific career, very high profile, polarizing guy. You love him or you hate him. Announced his retirement. And I wanted to bring this up just briefly from the perspective of reputation. We talked earlier about the CEO who was murdered, and you get your 40-word write-up on the company's like news site. And from Paul Krugman's standpoint, and you were saying he's kind of big with the left. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. And his famous quote, let me see if I can find it. His famous quote that people always kind of troll him with is, by 2005 or so, it will become clear that the internet's impact on the economy has been no greater than that of the fax machines. And so that's a quote that's never going to, he's never going to live that down. And someone, some guy, Parker Thayer, tweeted this out today. He said, "So long to a legendary economist." Not legendary in a good way, but legendary. And so I thought that was kind of funny, because if you click on Paul Krugman's Twitter profile, the first 2 words are Nobel laureate. Then he goes on, op-ed columnist, New York opinion, author, this and that. And you can put whatever you want your description to be of your career, but what people are going to remember is what people are going to remember. And for me, it's the fax machine thing. How about you?
Warren, once in a while, everyone has a bad take, right? Like I still have Kamala Harris 311 electoral votes sitting out there. And
Did you say 311? That's nuts. Oh my God.
I said 311. No, but seriously, like he was a very provocative economist. I don't even know what the heck he won the Nobel Prize for. And by the way, if it wasn't economics, I don't think the Nobel Prize in economics is actually a real thing. I think it's kind of a fake award. But at any rate, he was very provocative because he took controversial takes on a lot of things, came from the left, and I don't think a lot of people will be sad to see him go. It also kind of aligns with this idea of maybe the media is evolving more now as some of these older voices leave to be a bit more balanced. I noticed that LA Times caused a lot of controversy in their newsroom by announcing that they were introducing, I don't know how it works exactly, but some sort of AI technology to help identify bias in reporting. And so maybe, these are all like little steps toward bringing journalism back to sort of mainstream.
In 2008, Krugman was the sole winner of the Nobel Memorial Prize in Economic Sciences for his contributions to new trade theory and new economic geography. So that's how he will remember himself, certainly. I will remember the fax machine quote. And, you have to give respect to people who make bold predictions. It's easier to not, but, they don't always stand up to the test of time 20 years later.
Harris 311.
I'm glad you mentioned it.
Didn't work out.
I wasn't going to bring it up. I'm glad you mentioned it. Do you want to talk about the Paul Bissonnette story, or do you want to skip that?
No, we can talk about it.
So,
give the lowdown. I don't know. He was if you follow sports, he was everywhere. But go for it.
Do you want to describe this one, or do you want me to do it?
I can take a stab at it.
To put you on
the
the
spot. Fill
spot.
in any gaps.
Okay.
So, I actually like this guy a lot because we're from the same hometown, Welland, Ontario.
Didn't know that.
It's a little
fun fact
there. But he was a professional hockey player. He was an early guy on Twitter, and I think he sort of got into trouble sharing a little too much information or being a bit too free, and then he deleted his account, and that's why he's Biznasty 2.0. He reinvented himself, and his hockey career turned into a very successful career in hockey broadcasting. And he used social media as a real springboard to build his profile, build his reputation, and really be a voice that was a lot different than other voices that were the kind of boring white guy in hockey that had been up to that point. So to bring it to the point Warren was talking about, he was in Arizona. He was at a restaurant. There was a disturbance in the restaurant where these patrons were harassing and I guess actually eventually assaulting a manager. And then he stepped in to help, and it turned into a melee out in the street, and 6 guys got the business end of Biznasty, and they got arrested. And then Bissonnette went on social media to relay the story. I'll hand it back to you.
That was fantastic. That was way better than I could have done. Very nice. Maybe we should have you do all the intros from now on. So he's an interesting character because he's gotten himself he's on the Spit and Chicklets podcast, which has more than 229 subscribers. I understand it's like one of the top podcasts in the world, and it's interesting because a lot of the stories that the language they use, the stories they have are really kind of R-rated and kind of off color and in that world. But then at the same time, he'll be on the Hockey Night in Canada panel on Saturday night, so he's one of the only people who's been able to straddle those two worlds. And I think a lot of it is because he is pretty bright. He's pretty funny. He makes fun of himself. There was a really interesting thing with him and Brad Marchand. I don't know if you saw that the other day where he was making fun of his hair, and then Brad Marchand said, the guys that beat the wheels off you the other day. And so he doesn't take himself very seriously, but this situation now, it was actually, and apparently they have TV footage of this from the cameras in the place. It's not been made public yet, but I'd love to see it because He was jumped by 6 people. Apparently, one of these clowns had his finger like right in the face of an assistant manager who was quite a bit smaller. And apparently, Bissonnette, and he tells the story better than I do if you can go on Twitter, but he's looking around. Is anyone else going to jump in? You'd look for able-bodied guys to kind of jump in and come and resolve this thing, and no one did. So he gets up, grabs the guy's arm and says, "Hey, buddy, if you don't put that arm down, we're going to have some trouble," or whatever. And all the other guys jumped him. And it ends out in the parking lot, and he's getting kicked in the head. And you could have been very, very serious. Ended up going to the hospital. And so these guys were arrested. They all have these mugshots. What's interesting is that they all look much rougher than him. Like you said, they did get the business end. So, he's a professional hockey player, former enforcer. But 6-on-1 is not like he could have been killed. So it made me think the reason I wanted to bring it up was a couple things. So you talked earlier about, maybe someone from the library could have grabbed that phone, grabbed that camera and done a little statement, put it online and maybe made the story go away. And that's exactly what he did. So it was within 24 hours of it happening. He sent out a tweet. It was on November 25th, 9:38 p.m., 9.2 million views. And it's just him in a hat with, it's not fancy. And he's just looking in his phone. And he says, "Thanks for your calls and messages. Love you, effers. Had a blast getting to record Spit and Chicklets today and share some laughs with the gang. See you tomorrow." And then he has this 3.5 minute kind of recap of the event. And so he goes straight to the source. This is a new media guy. And instead of the rumor mill and speculation and all these things kind of filling up, he just dealt with it straight on and changed the whole narrative of the story, where he just eliminated rumor and speculation, and he got his story out there, which I thought was great. So there's a whole other side plot to this where these guys are apparently earlier in the day, they had done the same thing at a golf club where they were actually assaulting someone else. And there's been closed circuit footage of that's been released. And apparently, allegedly, they're part of like some sort of scam or organization where they're going around from town to town, ripping people off and going to the next town. So they're just a bunch of losers, basically. And these guys have all tried to delete their Twitter accounts and delete their social profiles. But I think this is going to end up being a really sorry incident for all of them. They're going to end up paying, maybe going to jail. And so, but the thing that sits weirdly with me on top of all of this is that no one else stood up to get involved. And it goes back to the story about, saving the dog, or just the kindness thing with giving the phone to the kid. Is it just easier to sit there and eat your meal and not get into it? Because I don't know, it's kind of a sad place to be. What are your, if you're sitting there, if you and me are having a beer and wings in this place and this goes down, are we jumping in? Or are we staying at our table? What do you think?
Oh, I play through these scenarios in my head all the time, Warren.
I was playing through it the other night when we were there. I thought it was going to happen when we were having a beer the other night.
But I go back to your point about Bissonnette, and there was no playbook when he was doing it. There was no playbook necessarily that you could follow to say this is going to lead me to become. I don't want to use the word influencer in the way it's sort of has a bit of a pejorative to it. It sounds like you're a fashion influencer or something. But no, he's an influencer in his profession, and he used social media to build. To build his reputation. We talk about, for clients, we talk about thought leadership and trying to get a client a voice so they can become a leader in the space they're an expert in. And the reality is that sometimes you just create the platform and you just create content and you keep pushing the content over the platform that you've created. And that can be the most successful way of doing it. And he's, I think, a testament to that.
Great example. And he's probably never going to hear this podcast, but I would just like to say to him, thanks for stepping in and doing the right thing. And, because I've got kids who worked at restaurants, and if someone had done that to them and he had stepped in, I would have been like, thank you to that guy. And, there should be more people who let the kid use the phone, save the dog, or step in to these situations. So thanks to him. And the last story I think we're going to wrap up with today relates to the ongoing Canada Post strike here in Canada. So this is our major mail carrier. They decided to go on strike just coincidentally, right before Black Friday, right before the holidays, right before Christmas. I'm sure there was no strategy related to that. strike is lingering on. The government's not saying anything about it. Usually you would have a situation where they would try to legislate them back to work. There's been a whole bunch of complicating factors now where Purolator and FedEx have been overwhelmed with orders. And so now they've capped the number of packages they will take each day, I think at like 1,500 or something. And so this is having massive implications on businesses, and people are just generally getting, I think a lot of people, not everyone, but getting a pretty bad taste in their mouth with respect to Canada Post. There was a tweet from Harley, the president of Shopify, and this is pre-Black Friday. He said, if there's ever a time for the government to take action, it's now. Canada Post going on strike 2 weeks before Black Friday devastates small businesses. As the leading Canadian carrier, this has massive consequences. Small businesses will unfairly bear the brunt. If small businesses are the backbone of our economy, the Canadian government needs to show that they have one and force this to end now. And he just tags Justin Trudeau and a couple other politicians. What's your take on the strike? Is this going to be, once this is resolved, are they going to just go back to being the same old inefficient, money-losing Canada Post? Or is this maybe a point in time where this is the beginning of a larger demise for this organization?
You have to imagine it's just a continuing atrophy of the place, right? Like the volume of mail they carry declines constantly over time. I think, it was kind of online sales that really gave it a lifeline, I think. But I'm not an expert enough to know about the business of it. But it seems like it complete reform is necessary to have a future. But interestingly enough, oftentimes the labor unions don't want to see complete reform. They want to hold on to the past as long as they can. And the thing that struck me about the messages that you hear coming from the union and the union employees is just sort of amazing sense of entitlement that they are owed something versus what a public servant typically is, which is someone who is providing service to the public. And yeah, they're compensated for it, but it's not, there isn't that entitlement that goes along with it.
So you sent over a TikTok that some person, allegedly a Canada Post employee, I think that's what he says he is. I haven't actually heard this yet, but we're going to play this. It's this guy just talking into the camera, and it's called Canada Post Strike Explained.
So technically I've been banned from making any content about Canada Post. But since we're on strike, figured I'd drop in, do a video kind of explaining everything, what's going on. Basically, Canada Post, they doubled our workload overnight. They did this whole restructuring, and it was horrible, and everybody hated it, and people couldn't pick up their kids from school anymore. I went from personally doing 5-hour days to 10-hour days, over 30,000 steps a day, up and down stairs, and then now winter's coming, so everybody's stressed out, and we're like, yo, this is way too much. And yeah, Canada Post is like, oh, well, we want to not compensate you guys and take away more from your pensions and a bunch of terrible things. Anyways, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that, they're not looking out for us, and we're just saying, hey, we're worried here.
That makes me angry.
Yeah, me too.
5-hour days. What the? Sign me up. Where do you get these 5-hour day jobs? And I'm sure you're not getting 5-hour salaries. You're getting 8-hour salaries plus benefits and everything else. It's 10 years from now. How do you think mail is going to be delivered to us? Is it going to be that guy and his buddies, or is it going to be Tesla robots roaming the streets with their mailbags?
Automation is definitely going to have a role in it for sure. The only thing holding automation back will be what we are experiencing now, which is labor relations, stopping sort of the evolution of these services. It's a 19th, well, I don't know when mail started, but it's clearly an 18th or 19th century industry that hasn't evolved to a great degree.
So the United States Postal Service has that famous phrase, the one I'm talking about. We're going to read it.
Neither rain nor whatever.
Neither rain neither snow nor rain nor heat nor gloom of night stays these couriers from the swift completion of their appointed rounds. That's not what I just heard. Oh, winter's coming. I'm doing 30,000 steps. Now they want us to they want us to deliver the mail. What's going on? In preparation for this podcast, I was looking up the recent news, and this is one I hadn't even thought of. Service Canada is currently holding 185,000 passports of people who have applied for the new passports and they haven't got them delivered. So you just think of all the ripple effects of people who are not going to be able to travel, whether it's for business or for pleasure. And those are being held on to. From a business standpoint, Canada Post lost $750 million last year alone, almost $1 billion, and $3 billion since 2018. So something's certainly not working there. And I saw a tweet from, I forget that guy's name, Dan something, the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, saying that thousands of businesses are going to end up going bankrupt. And I've heard some of the personal stories of people saying, we're having this great year, and now there's literally no option for us. There's some companies that are driving around in a car to deliver their products to people. So this is, I'm sure if you're a postal worker and you're on strike, and I'm sure a lot of these people are struggling because everything costs more. Butter's $9, filling up your car is $100. It's but it's not, everybody's dealing with that, and not everyone has the ability to just go on strike and hold the country hostage. So not a great look for Canada Post, and for that employee, it's funny because he starts out by saying, we're banned from making any content, but here we go, let her rip. And so I think he might be getting a call from HR or from comms. I don't know.
Yeah, no kidding.
Any other stories you wanted to mention? Any follow-ups on any of this stuff before we close it out for this week?
I don't think so. Yeah, I think that does it.
All right. We should also say that December 6th in Canada is the 35th anniversary of the Montreal Massacre. Terrible situation. If you haven't, for folks outside the country, this is one of the worst mass shootings in Canada, targeting specifically women. And, very unfortunate event. Hard to believe it was that long ago.
Yeah, it is.
I did a podcast interview with Simon Dingley, the guy from CBC. You probably know the name. And he covered that story. And he was telling me, one of the stories he told is he was in Montreal that day and found out where the shooter's house was, and ended up getting into, he was inside the guy's house. The police were not thrilled about that. Like, how did you get in here? It was open. And so he was in, reporting on the story, but just talking about the chills, being in the room, thinking this is where this guy plotted this, just awful event. Not a very happy note to end. Do we have anything happier to end with?
Oh,
you must have something.
I'm unprepared for that ending.
I didn't have it written down. It just kind of occurred. I'm looking at the date. I'm like, oh, that's right, December 6th. Yeah. Awkward way to end, I suppose.
Yeah. Oh.
Well, aliens. There's aliens out there.
Yeah. Hey, check with the aliens.
And hopefully they come in peace. For any of you Star Trek fans out there, hopefully it's the Star Trek kind of people. Anyway,
people would know by now if they didn't.
You think they're not just scoping us out?
Hey, if they can fly here and be undetected, I don't think we would put up much of an opposition.
So you think this is the U.S. government?
Probably.
Okay.
Probably.
Well, if they have this kind of technology, that's pretty badass.
Well, they're always developing these kind of black programs that have neat things that we don't see until much later.
Man. Well, time will tell. We'll see. Maybe we'll have an update next week. If you have an idea for the show, or if you have a guest you'd like to have us bring on, because we haven't had someone we had Molly on here a while ago, and it's probably time for our end of year wrap up. So if you have any stories from a reputational standpoint, positive, negative, any of the hits of the last year, send those along to us either by email or online. I think X is probably the best place to do it.
On X, yeah.
Yeah, and we'll be happy to throw that in. Thanks again for listening. Take a minute to recommend the show or give it a rating. Helps other people to find it. And we'll see you next week. Take care, buddy.
Bye-bye.
What's happening? Tell me what's going down. Make yourself at home. This is Reputation Town. Talking public relations to corporate reputations, media, communications, all types of situations. Hey, Reputation Town. Reputation Town. Warren and John, tell them how it's going down. Let's go. The Reputation Town Podcast.